What the United States is experiencing right now is a cascading crisis of systemic shortages. One shortage affects another shortage, and then a new political policy will come out which makes things even worse. In Iowa and Minnesota, millions upon millions of chickens are dying of something and then being suspected of having bird flu and are being then slaughtered on orders of the government by the millions without permission of the farmer. In this case on the Rembrandt farm, one PCR test of one chicken caused a government order to be written for 3.5 million egg-laying chickens to be suffocated, and then they were either roasted to death or in some other way they were exterminated. 3.5 million chickens. And that's the end of the eggs from that company, also the end of the workers' jobs, and then workers' paychecks, and then revenue at local businesses. And then what further cascading crises and cascading failures will intersect once things like that begin to happen? So America is now in the process of finding this out. And if the system breaks in just a few places, which happens all the time, Americans have always been really good and really brilliant at repairing just a few breaks. But if it breaks in too many places all at once, can it be repaired, and how quickly can it be repaired? So let's take a quick look at the laws of harvest. Look at these eggs, these free-range organic eggs, freshly collected from my hen house just in the last few hours. But it's impossible to harvest them or to have them for eating or for incubating into other little chicks, or for creating more chicken flocks, unless there has been some input into them, sowing seed, doing work, sowing energy, investing time, investing talent with this end in view. And it's not that hard. A lot of eggs for relatively little work. But the point is the investment must take place or you don't get this. And it cannot happen the day before we harvest the eggs. Yesterday the hens were eating this grain which had been planted months earlier and stored in my shed. Okay, and then the hens had to come from someplace. And in this particular case, can you see this little guy down here? My daughter took one of the eggs from this basket 23 days ago and incubated it and hatched 14 little chicks out of it. He's here, but he's sleeping. You may hear from him a little bit later. And then what had to come before him? Well, certainly his egg had to be fertilized with a rooster, and it was. And so this little chick wouldn't die in the cold spring weather. We had to build a chicken house, which we invested time in doing. And then there are further and further things. The rooster and the hen who contributed to this little guy had to be hatched themselves. And then there had to be fertilizer applied that was brought to us by trucks, that was farmed with a tractor, so that we would have the grain for the parents to eat, so that they would have the energy to be able to produce this little guy. And it goes back and back and back, and we can see all these different inputs. And the quick moral of the story is that there can be no harvest of nutritious food without time and fertilizer and tools and planning in the birth of new life. And this is what you can be working on in your own neighborhood and in your own county. You can grow produce in a garden, a backyard garden, and you can produce seeds there. You can save the seeds and share them with your neighbors, so there are many more different gardens happening all around you. And the same with chickens. This little chick was given with brothers and sisters to another family in our neighborhood, so that they can then begin producing the same process, on and on. More chicks, more roosters, more fertilization, more chicken flocks, more hatching, more incubating of eggs so that they can be hatched and they can have protein in the meantime. And all this is happening outside the fragile system of centralized American agriculture, which is totally centralized at the moment, but it has to be decentralized, and you have to get involved in that. So am I talking about simply adopting a new fun hobby like hobby farming? And no, I'm not. I'm talking about you squarely facing, honestly, the fragility of our centralized transportation and energy system and agricultural systems. They're locked together. They're interlocked. And the different breakages in the system that are happening at this very moment currently affect the harvest of many things, not just eggs, the eggs that were discontinued coming out of Iowa and have caused the egg prices in your stores to go sky high. It's not just that. Grocery stores cannot get baby formula now. And yes, there is a shortage. Yes, there's a political problem. Yes, they're being given to people who are pouring over our borders illegal, but there are additional problems. The ingredients are not coming. Ingredients for other things in my own county are not arriving into my county right now because of shortages and breakages. Grocery stores cannot depend on replenishing the shelves every 7 hours like they were able to do 2 and 3 and 4 months ago. And how about your internet suppliers of the other things you need, the gear, ammo, holsters, chest rigs, body armor, radios, all those things that you've been putting off buying. My quick summary is this. There are things you've wanted to do that you can't really put off again. The production timeline is breaking. It's breaking down. And if it breaks down at one point, this harvest right here of protein and the future chickens may not be there when you need them, unless you and your local neighbors in your local backyards figure out how to share resources, including knowledge, including seeds, including tools, including new life. And let me just say this, when we look at this timeline, if we had a tape measure that can measure time, let's say this one right here can do months, we have to admit that this is roughly a minimum of 7 months to do what I've described, to get the propane and the ingredients to the fertilizer and everything else you need, and the tractor parts and everything. Now, what if you had a delay in the tractor parts and the chips that are coming out of China, because in Shanghai that port is closed and locked down and the ships are not moving? There's a breakage of the system and the supply chain. What would happen? You'd have to get another tape measure that measures in years, not in months, and you may be looking at 2.5 years just to get from here to some protein that you need, that you can do in a decentralized way. Do you see the point? We can no longer wait to begin taking initiative to do things that we need to do to be free and independent of a centralized system. So if you want freedom, you must take local responsibility to keep new life continuing into our uncertain future. I'm Jeffrey Botkin.